Welcome into the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check us every day on Dash Radio. That's the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Download the Dash Radio app. Search for Nothing But Net. You'll find us every day from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, check out 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E. Reasonsports.com for all of Brady Hawk's latest takeaways. You can find those on the site as soon as the Heat games end. Also, a bunch of new Dolphins coverage up there. We're doing Marlins stuff every day. Our guy David Fernandez is putting up all the Marlins coverage, and our podcast, 3 Yards Per Carry, 5 Rings, Canes, Balls, Cast, Light Skin Opinions, Shulable podcast, and more. And our YouTube channel. We're getting close to 4,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Help us get to our goal of 10,000 by the end of the year, and we will continue to put up new shows. Our friend Kylie Wang has a new show which is starting this week. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. One of them is the Gonzalez and Tybor Law Firm. You can find them at bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. You know, a recent report showed that over 45% of people use their stimulus checks to repay debt. This is money that could have and should have gone to cover living expenses. Even before the pandemic, household debt in this country, especially credit card debt, was going up, and it was hurting families and small businesses. Nobody likes to consider bankruptcy as an option for dealing with your debt, but bankruptcy is one of the few laws that exist to actually help consumers. So before you make another debt payment that you can't afford, or you do something drastic like empty out your 401k and take a penalty, or borrow money from friends and family, why don't you talk to a professional about your options? Contact Gonzalez and Tybor. It's bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. The phone number is 954-378-8184. Consultations are always free and can be done by telephone or video conference. This is a local law firm. They've helped hundreds of clients get the fresh start that they deserve. So if you're having any issues with debt, don't hesitate. The phone number, 954-378-8184. bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf 954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here on 5 on the Floor. Again, you can find us every day on Dash Radio, Nothing But Net channel, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Today's floor plan, I've got Greg Sylvander. I've got Alf on Sydney. You can follow Greg at Greg Sylvander. You can follow Alf, of course, at Alf954. Alex Toledo will be with us later in the week. We've also got an episode coming up. Greg and I recorded an interview earlier today with the high school coach of Duncan Robinson at Exeter, and that was a lot of fun. So we're gonna play that at some point this week, likely after the Heat complete what will probably be a sweep. Monday 6:30, they play the Indiana Pacers. We're not going to devote a whole bunch of time to that today because we have a special guest. I think this is the 4th time on a 5 Reasons platform. Is that right, George? The 4th time I've had you, I think?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, I was on with him the other day. This is Jorge Sedano. You can follow him. He's one name like Madonna. Follow him at Sedano on Twitter.
Yeah, I think 4 sounds about right, Ethan, though I am a little disappointed that I can't see you on this podcast and I can see everyone else.
Yeah, nobody can see me. That's how I roll. And I get to see Alf and Greg. I saw you for an hour and a half the other night. You did this Zoom party. If you're not following,
I appreciated that.
How often are you doing these, George?
Maybe like twice a week. Like just twice a week, just because on local radio in LA, when the Lakers play, I'm off because the games are on at the same time. So it just gives me a reason to gas bag, so I don't lose practice,
I was on with Amin. What's Amin doing with that beard, by the way? He's just letting it go? That's just.
Levitard calls it hobo chic.
It's horrible. It's terrible.
It is terrible.
Listen, I'm not doing much better over here. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, but he's committed to it though.
Listen, he has embraced the aesthetic that you can do that right now in the pandemic.
Exactly.
You can look like an insane person and pass, but I feel like barbershops are opening more and more. Like it's less and less acceptable as every day passes. But he's holding on for dear life, and I respect it, but it's terrible. It looks terrible.
And
it is bad. I sent him a picture the other day of Cornel West. Do you know who that is?
Yes. The professor.
The law professor. Yeah. And I was just like
accurate.
And I was just like, if this is what you're striving for, you're not accomplishing it because it works for him. It doesn't work for you.
No. I mean, it means smart, but there's got to be that kind of level of intelligence to pull that off. Like, I mean, Cornel West is one of the smartest people on the planet. So, for sure. By the way, which of the was that the Kamensky brothers I was on with? The Kaminsky brothers? Which of the brothers was I on with?
Kamenetsky. You should be able to pronounce. I mean, for real, you don't know how to pronounce Kamenetsky? Like, what's going on here?
I don't know what. I mean, that's.
I'm just saying, you're a scholar. You went to Johns Hopkins. You can't read somebody's name and know how to pronounce it.
Well, I've always appreciated that you use the Johns instead of the John. That's nice. That most people don't actually do that. So that shows.
Well, I know. Yeah. I've actually visited the campus, so I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, George W. Bush came and said John, and he was booed off the stage. So that's not the only reason.
What a surprise!
that was one of the reasons. Anyway, all right, let's get to it. There's a reason you're here. We're not going to devote 30 minutes to this. I promise you. Okay, but. And I know Alex doesn't like me using funeral analogies right now, and I apologize for this. But
it's not the right time.
It's not the right time. But the Sixers are dead. Okay, so let's just start there. All right. So
from a sports perspective,
their season is over. They have been swept. They are gone. People were resurfacing tweets from all over the place, including Greg resurfacing mine about Jimmy Butler a year and a half ago when the circumstances were different. Okay, so my phone is still blowing up. But the Sixers went from a team that were supposed to be this season a contender to go to the finals, potentially win a championship, to a team that got swept out of the first round. I know they didn't have Ben Simmons, but also a team that at this stage of the quote-unquote process was supposed to be a perennial contender, and now they appear to be in blow-up stage. George, I will let you go first before Alf or Leif jump on you.
No, you don't have to. Just let them ask me the questions.
Well, okay,
we can talk about it. I don't care.
Go ahead. What happened here, George, in your view?
So
why would you not rather be the Sixers?
So look, here's the reality of what happened here with this franchise. They entrusted the franchise after Brian Colangelo had his situation, right? If we all remember, I believe his wife had 3 burner accounts, if I recall correctly, where they were criticizing Sam Hinkie and players. And I don't remember all the details, but whatever. Long story short, the Colangelo family had taken over for Hinkie. And look, I think Hinkie, while being radical in his approach, I think that I was surprised the NBA stepped in the way they did. With Hinkie. And it's really one of the few things I've disagreed on with Adam Silver. If the owners of the team are willing to do that, that's them. That's on them. That's not for you to step in that situation. It's literally the only thing I disagree with. But anyway, so he's out, Colangelo's in. And look, Colangelo, like any GM, including his father, right, has hits and misses, but way more hits than misses. And he was a 2-time executive of the year in Toronto prior to arriving in Philadelphia. And, he built a team, if we all recall, that beat the Heat in 5 that had a ton of shooting around it. In JJ Redick, clearly, Marco Bellinelli, Ersan Ilyasova, both moves made at the deadline, by the way, or in the buyout market. And they built a good team, or he built a good team that year on the fly to add to what people thought was a promising young core, particularly a young duo, right? Which is what we have today in the NBA. And then he's out. And all of a sudden, Elton Brand is in, who's never been a GM in his entire life. Now, look, Elton Brand did pull off the Butler deal. You got to give him credit for that. But really, everything outside of that was a disaster. He lost all his shooting, right? All the shooting was gone. He tried to replace Ersan Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli and JJ Redick's production with Glenn Robinson III and Alex Burks, okay? That's what he tried to do. So, yeah, and then the Brett thing with Jimmy, as we all now know. Now look, that stuff is new as far as the public. That stuff had been heard of. I'm sure Jimmy's even hinted at it in Miami. You know what I'm saying? About how much Spo is different than other coaches he's had or whatever. And a lot of that was a shot at Brett. I mean, we all know the story that was out there about him and Brett in a film session. That was public knowledge too. So that shouldn't be a huge surprise. But I love the way that they're scapegoating Brett, just for an aside for a second. Like, oh, yeah, that's the reason that this happened. Because Jimmy's not here because Brett couldn't get along with him. Not because the roster construction sucks.
How obvious was that, though? I'm sorry to keep going on the aside, but how obvious was that was a leak from Elton Brand?
Oh, my God.
Come on.
I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, that's why I tweeted it. I'm like, really? You're going to scapegoat the coach on the day you're about to get swept? Like, that is like, you know, I mean, you couldn't be more obvious in that situation.
And to bring up Jimmy, that was the thing that was fun. Like the fact that Jimmy was the problem is we don't have Jimmy Butler anymore. And the reason we don't have Jimmy Butler anymore is because of Brett Brown. Like it was so obvious and transparent. Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Well,
embarrassing. Embarrassing is the right word for sure.
But it's not just that. Then the Heat. Okay, and I love what they're doing on social media.
They tweeted the Jimmy appreciation thing. Yeah, I saw that.
Playoff Jimmy Appreciation Day. Okay?
At the buzzer. Like, let's not forget the timing of that tweet.
Oh,
they were sitting there waiting to hit send.
That was instruction from Pat.
Yeah. By the way, Philly, who I didn't bet on in one or pick to win in any game in that series, I had the Celtics -7 today and lost that because of that ridiculous Embiid 3. I'm not necessarily thrilled with them on a number of different fronts today. But either way, back to the story. So when Colangelo had to step down and you put in a guy who's never run an organization before, and then, look, I did a number of their games over the last year or so. And there was a clear disconnect between them and Brett at this point. Like they had tuned him out, and it happens. After a certain amount of years, it happens. Like you just tune them out, and you just need a fresh voice, especially if you're not winning the way you're expected to win, right? So, and the roster is more challenging. So that means those guys' production on the floor together has gotten worse since that year where they beat the Heat in 5. And then because there's been less and less shooting, less and less spacing for them to work in. And then in this series, once Simmons was out, he's the one guy that guards Tatum, and guards him well. So once he was out, that's why I'm glad that the ESPN.com picks came up right as that news broke, because I went, I gave them one game because I thought maybe Embiid would have like a 50-point performance, but it was Celtics in 5 when I had to pick for .com. Because that was it. But really, that's the reality of it, is that they've had a number of opportunities to get this right. Colangelo set them up. The only mistake Colangelo made there in Philly was the Fultz thing. And by the way, even that, like at the time, if you would have told me, talking to the people that I spoke to in the Pac-12 that competed against Fultz before the craziness of his shot, they would have all said, yeah, he's a number 1 pick for sure. There's no doubt. Like he's a top 2 or 3 pick. Like he can score at ease. He's tougher on defense than you think, but he had to take on a bigger scoring load. So anyway, the Colangelo stuff, that's really his only mistake.
Well,
but
George,
the rest of the stuff he did right.
Before you go on, Magic Johnson said that Markelle Fultz had the best workout he'd ever seen. So I'm not going to –
right.
We can revisit it and say that you ended up, passing on Tatum and giving up the extra first-round pick. But yeah, I blame them more – honestly, for the picks before the Okafor pick, when it was pretty clear that Okafor's game was not going to translate to start him at the next level. He was slow with a back-to-the-basket game in a league that was going away from that.
Sure.
And trading Drew Holiday for Noel, that was a hinky move, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Ethan. He was just stripping it down at that point. Like that seemed fairly obvious. And Drew Holiday is a nice player, but Drew Holiday is not like getting you over the hump to win a championship.
Drew Holiday was 25 at the time, George.
I get it, but you hadn't seen enough to know if he was a difference maker or not by 25 years old.
I think he is a difference maker, is he not? He'd certainly make a difference with the Heat right now.
I don't think so. I disagree on Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday is a good player. I think if Drew Holiday is one of your top 3 players, you're not a championship team.
I disagree with that.
Okay, well, I'm just telling I'm telling you based on
3 or 4. If he's your third or fourth best player, I think you can be a great team. I'm telling you based
on what other GMs around the league think about him.
Well, what I would say is the Sixers could have used a guy like Drew, but the Drew thing, that's the things we're talking about right now. That's kind of ancient history, right? And the Fultz thing, it's not about drafting Fultz; it's about failing to develop him and giving up on him. No.
Alf, the guy malfunctioned. Like it just there's like even in Orlando they're having a tough time figuring that out. Like he malfunctioned
But hold on. I think we should shelve all the transaction talk because truthfully, like this is the thing. And George, you alluded to it when you talked about that they switched from Colangelo to a GM who had no prior experience. Pat Riley was ousted 3 times in a row by a lower seeded New York Knicks team. And Mickey Arison didn't oust him and didn't make that reactionary move where you bring in a new guy just for the sake of bringing in a new guy. And I think that like that kind of stems like that. The inspiration behind that is kind of where we're going with why these franchises get stuck where they are year after year.
Well,
decade after
wait,
decade.
Greg, he stepped down because of the embarrassment of what happened. Like there was no, like that's not losing to the Knicks 3 years in a row. That's your wife getting caught with burners and talking about players on your roster. You know what I mean? Like that's not the same thing. What do you mean? How are you shrugging your shoulders at that? That is not the same thing. Losing on a bounce or a play here or a bad Bennett Salvatore call is not being embarrassed yourself, embarrassing your family, embarrassing your dad's legacy, not just your own, and embarrassing the league in a lot of ways.
Fair point.
I think Lace's larger point is just saying that the bad teams stay bad. Right. And there's a lack of stability in a lot of these organizations but
they're not bad.
No, I'm not saying they're bad, but I don't see that. Like, look, they're a mess. They're a playoff team, but they're an absolute mess. Come on, George. They are a mess. Look what Josh Richardson was saying about Brett Brown after the game. Josh Richardson is literally saying that there's no accountability in this locker room. Like,
right.
And how long have they held on to Brett Brown? That's another thing. Yes, they're throwing Brett Brown under the bus, and it's shitty what they're doing to him. But why are you keeping this guy around? He's a dinosaur. Like,
I don't think. Okay, first of all, while I agree with you that, and it's what I alluded to earlier about Embiid and Simmons kind of tuning him out. I think a lot of that is because they view him as the guy who got them through the process, right? Like they still look at him as like the high school coach or the college coach. They don't look at him as like the finished product in that sense. Like they look at him and they're like, they just lost respect for him. But it's because of the country club attitude that you're referring to. It's not that he doesn't know basketball because he definitely knows how to coach basketball.
Any NBA coach knows basketball.
Okay, but you made it seem like he doesn't. Like
I don't know.
I'm coaching junior high. You know?
I will say that when you're down 14 in the fourth quarter and you throw out Embiid and Horford to try to get you back in the game, like that says a lot about his coaching style and his.
You mean today?
Yeah.
Well, what else does he have?
Listen, come on. Anything is better than when you're down 14 and you need threes and you need to come back and there's 4 minutes left in the game and they were actively trying to win the game because they had their starters in. Like that's not a good.
But aren't we arguing?
Hold on.
Wait,
George,
hold on.
Wait.
Are we arguing minutia here? Aren't we?
I don't want to argue minutia, but this is ridiculous. Okay. Who on that roster did you want on the floor that wasn't on the floor?
Anybody who could shoot a three.
Oh, no, that's not an answer. Stop. That's not an answer.
Honestly, I'd rather
look at the 5 that were on the floor.
I'd rather Thibault be out there. I'd rather Thibault be out there or Alex Burke be out there.
Thibault literally hits the backboard when he shoots threes.
Okay, it's better than having Horford and Embiid together on the court.
You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
Horford and Embiid cannot play together, and their offense comes to a grinding halt.
And they don't have another Yes, that's true in the big picture, Alf. But in this instance today, they don't have another option.
Last ditch, 14 points down with 4 minutes to go. You put out 2 big men, right? Like that can't play well together.
As opposed to who? You don't have an answer to that.
I said I would literally rather.
Anybody is not an answer.
I said Matisse Thybulle or Burke. Either one of those guys.
Matisse Thybulle, literally, I'm telling you, hit the backboard.
One shot.
That's every game. There's a shot like that.
Okay, but
star players wouldn't have tuned them out if they had a little bit more culture, right, George?
Okay, whatever. Anyway, long story short is all it's going to take. I have a pretty good insight as to what's going to happen there. Clearly, they're going to clean house. There's going to be a new coach, probably a new GM, and there's going to be a person that takes that over that's going to be that has a real track record. They're not going to screw around. They already made the mistake of going, we'll give someone a chance for the first time. They are going proven commodity now as far as a roster builder. That's what I'll say.
Okay, so let's cycle back here a little bit because I don't want to argue about today's game. as much because
hey, that's your boy Alf over there.
No, because
bully Alf, who likes to bully people around here.
No, because this was over.
Damn right.
This was over, okay, and Brett Brown was out before today even happened.
Yes.
To me,
Yes.
this argument is not about today. It's not even about this series. It's a grander argument that we've been having now for 4 years about organizational approach, okay? And we can talk about all the things that went wrong for Philadelphia after Hinkie started the process, and I get that. But the bigger point that's being made, and I'm going to need Greg to hike up his mic a little because we're having trouble hearing him, is that the bigger point that is made is Philadelphia took an approach that was totally counter to anything that and any team in the association's ever done, okay? I mean, to this degree. Other teams have tanked, but not set us out on a tanking platform for a period of years, okay, which is what they basically did. Publicly. They went about and did this, and then basically, let's just be honest, fuck the whole thing up. Now, we can talk about whether it was the commissioner jumping in and getting rid of Hinkie in the middle of the process, but look, Hinkie was not perfect, okay, not even close in terms of the players that he picked.
This was the point I was trying to make before Alf interrupted me.
What the hell, bro? Like, we were talking about Brett Brown. He sucks.
So, see, but there you go. You say things like that. He sucks. He doesn't suck. You don't coach in the NBA if you suck.
But it doesn't matter for the purposes of this
let me tell you
argument.
something.
We're talking about in relative terms. Okay, let's get off of Brett Brown. Like,
Okay, I get it. But let me answer Ethan's question.
He's going to be next to you on the jump next year.
He might. I don't know. I will say this. There's only like 3 coaches in the time I've covered the NBA that I'm like, they have no business being in the NBA, and he's not one of them. But anyway, and I will not reveal the other ones. Ethan knows one of them because I told him the story over the weekend. So
wow,
to
Ron
your,
Rothstein catching strays out of nowhere. That's
your
crazy.
question, Ethan, that's what you get for being a bully on Twitter. That's while I'm trying to do a radio show. You're like tweeting me in the middle of my godforsaken radio show while I'm trying to multitask. Anyway, to answer your question, Ethan, Hinkie realized the draft is a bit of a crapshoot, okay? Much like, for example, and again, I'm not comparing him to Bill Belichick, but like Bill Belichick's approach of trading out of the first round, right? Because he feels like there's more value that way. So Hinkie's thing was, I'm just going to accumulate picks. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to miss on some, and I'm going to hit on at least a couple. And if I get at least a couple, I've got the core of what I need moving forward, which he accomplished.
Yeah, but the issue is being able to maximize those players and actually like put together a roster that complements itself in a way that can actually get to the mountaintop. And I think that that's the underrated part of this, is that essentially you have a lot of teams that can assemble a lot of assets. I've heard the Minnesota Timberwolves are all of a sudden a great, exciting young team in years past. The Phoenix Suns are the hot new team. The Sixers are that team. But these franchises just over and over again show that they make bad decisions. They pull the plug on coaches too soon, pull the plug on maybe general managers too soon, and then also just can't necessarily put together the right pieces to surround these guys and maximize them. So that was like in 2017 when I was saying I would still rather be the Heat, is that from top down, I feel like the decision-making that'll take place, generally speaking, history tells me that a Pat Riley-led organization is going to fare better than these cats that have processes.
What you were doing then was being a blind homer, because Pat Riley lost his mind for 2 off seasons. And listen, this is a man, there is not a person in basketball that I have more respect for. When I saw him at Le Batard's wedding, I spoke to him for 30 minutes, and it might have been the most enjoyable time I had at the wedding, and it was a fun wedding, okay? But he lost his mind. Even he's admitted as such, okay? Let's not act like he hasn't come out and said that he made mistakes.
No, they were totally mistakes. They were mistakes.
So let's not act like he got lucky that Jimmy and Brett didn't get along. That's the reality of all of this. If Jimmy gets along with Brett, Jimmy is still in Philadelphia, and the Heat are still trying to play Justice Winslow. Okay.
Maybe, but also when you build this type of organization and you have guys like Dwayne and CB and others that will go to bat for you in league circles, like, why do you think Jimmy was enamored with Miami and like was a magnet to that organization? Dwayne co-signed that when he was in Chicago. So I feel like some of this, it transcends just each transaction in itself.
Well, I think where Greg and I were in 2017 or whenever we started having this argument, which has been fucking fantastic and really fun, by the way. I really want everybody to understand that Sedano and I and Leif and we don't all hate each other. Like, we enjoy this stuff. Like, it's wrestling. We're all walking out there like Hogan with our ears to the crowd. Sedano walks in with the heel, hisses with a steel chair. It's fun, right? It's sports. Like, nobody's angry. A lot of you guys are out there, F Sedano, calm down. Like, listen, Sedano is one of like the only people in the national media that backs the Heat consistently. So let's just get out the way. Now, here's where Sedano's wrong. In 2017, but we had this argument. One of the things that Leif and I were always trying to say is despite the fact that Pat Riley made mistakes, we trust the Miami Heat to be able to fix those mistakes because of their track record. Like, we just trust in this organization because I've been watching basketball for 40 years, basically, and all I've watched is bad teams stay bad as long as they have the same ownership and the same management. So I just don't trust these teams to ever fix the mistakes.
Okay, but what I would say to you, Alf, is this, okay, that I don't think Philadelphia's ownership is bad. I think that they're young, they're aggressive. They've also had some crappy luck, right? We just talked about the Colangelo thing. We
just talked about the Heat luck. Luck is part of all of this.
No. I understand that. But what I'm saying to you is there are a lot of ways to lose a GM, okay, including a legacy GM. Very few times in the history of any sport has a GM been lost because his wife had 3 burner accounts ripping people within the organization.
But I think more of our argument was against Hinkie and the whole losing and the process and just the entire methodology of it. Like,
it's radical. I'm with you.
And it's
radical,
not. But to me, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to me.
But these are human beings. I think the point that Al's making, and this is the same issue I had to a degree with what the Dolphins were doing, but I actually think what the Dolphins did was a little more systematic. And they would be able to dig out of it easier, is when you create this culture of losing and then you don't my big issue, and I remember having Malik Rose on my show on Bleacher Report Radio that I used to do with Howard Beck, and the problem that Malik Rose had with and I think Malik Rose ended up joining the organization. He did. But at the time, one of the problems he had with what they were doing was because they didn't have any vets in the room. So they kept bringing in young players who had nobody to set examples for them. They have no sustained culture in Philadelphia, so you don't have the Alonzo Mournings or the Keith Haskins or those types who are still around. And so there was just nobody to show the young players the way. And I think we've seen that now because the only 2 guys that they hit on, George, were 2 guys, first thing, who had to sit out a whole year in Embiid and in Simmons, right? And those 2 guys in their own way have issues. I mean, Embiid doesn't seem to get along, play well with others, okay? And Simmons, and I think this was Jimmy's big issue there, at least from a playing perspective, Simmons is more interested in the other shit that comes with being an NBA player than he is with actually being a superstar. And there's no one there. There's no vets. And the one year that they did something, they brought in Bellinelli. They brought in Ilyasova. At least, I mean, they brought in some vets who'd actually accomplished something.
They had JJ.
They had JJ Redick. Okay, and then those guys leave, and you don't have anybody. So the bigger point, and I want to get to the Heat with you, and I want to get to the Lakers. I don't want to spend all this time on Philadelphia. We brought you on for this reason, obviously. But the bigger point is this. Do you think that another team, because I know what you think of the Heat, but do you think another team should even try this again? I mean, is this proven to be a systemic failure, essentially?
I mean, I think you can try it. I think that it just depends on the situation, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're Minnesota and, and let's say Karl Anthony Towns leaves you in free agency, whenever that, or demands a trade or whatever, then maybe you reboot it. You know what I mean? Like, they've already only made the playoffs once in 15 years. You know what I'm saying? So, like, how much harder would it be to be bad?
I think they're doing it right now, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, right, in essence. So I think it just depends. What I would say to you is this. The difference between Hinkie and, let's say, a Daryl Morey, who is basically who Hinkie learned from, is that Daryl did the stuff you're talking about. His team still had veteran guys, right? His teams were also probably a little better balanced. He wasn't as extreme, but I think that I do think that someone else will try it, just not not exactly the way
As
they went
blatantly.
about it.
I think it's the blatant. I think it's, and Jack Alfonso Hoops on Twitter pointed this out, and it's just the fact that he shoved it in the NBA's face.
Right, that doesn't help.
It doesn't help at all. Like they have to maintain some competitive, at least a semblance of competitive balance, even if we all know what's really going on. Like you can't just flaunt the fact that you're trying to lose in the NBA's face. They're not going to stand for it.
And by the way, I only bring up Minnesota as an example, right? Like, I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do, but Gerson is also a Morey disciple, much like Hinkie was. And if Towns were to leave, he probably would have no other recourse, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know Kevin Garnett's trying to buy the team with a group, but it's not like, just because Kevin Garnett's there, guys are going to be like, yeah, I want to go to Minnesota in free agency. Like, that's probably not going to happen unless they can build a winning program again. So to answer your question, I think if someone did it, they would do it, but it would be a modified version of it. Listen, when you're making
a shorter
omelet,
version.
Yeah, when you're making an omelet, you're going to break eggs, man. Like, that's just the reality of it, especially if you've never done it before. So I think that the Sixers situation was radical at first, but I understood it. I thought, then headed on the right path with the Colangelo family, and then that thing, went crazy for reasons beyond anyone's real control. Well, except the Colangelo family.
Sounds like a lack of culture.
The Colangelo family.
In the family.
Listen,
right, yeah.
The Colangelo family, I mean, they're not Pat Riley, but it's not like, I mean, they literally restarted and rebooted Team USA for us to win golds again.
Right,
Let's not act like there's some, they're like nobodies in the basketball world.
Bunch of bums.
Yeah. So we would still be losing in gold medal games if it wasn't for them. But anyway, I think that there's still look, with Embiid and Simmons, you have a 25 and 26-year-old star, two guys that are both top 15 players in the league, who I still think have heights that they can hit. I don't think they've hit their ceiling. So if you get a real architect of rosters in there, who then hires a real coach, right? And again, I'm not trying to knock Brett, but someone with actual championship experience, right? Or deep playoff experience, like what the Lakers did with Vogel this year, right? They hired Vogel. They could have hired Jason Kidd. That was the sexy name. I'm sure LeBron would have loved it, but they went out of the box and said, let's go Vogel. Vogel's been a successful coach. Yes, he hasn't won a championship, but he's been a successful coach in this league. So you can find someone like that and say to yourself, this person can get these two guys to understand what it takes to go deep into the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. And be a coach, a teacher, a mentor, be a hard ass if he's got to be, like that's what the next person who constructs the roster and is going to be in charge of that organization needs to do. And if they do that, they're still going to be a contender for the Eastern Conference and potentially a championship. It's not like, if someone else comes in new, they got to trade Horford, to Alf's point. But, again, I'm not trying to argue about today, but I just think today they didn't have any options. But Horford, you were right in the sense of, and that's what I was trying to say earlier, in the big picture sense, it doesn't make sense. But Horford, I think, can be traded because I think that there are young teams that want an Al Horford because all they've got is a bunch of young guys on the roster. And again, I am just recklessly speculating here. I am not saying that this is going to happen, but I could see Joe Dumars in Sacramento now going, you know what? We could use an Al Horford. We don't have a reliable big man who can do the big man stuff in today's game, stretch the floor, rebound, box out, set screens like that. Because Giles is young and also, look, they're still trying to figure out what his health situation is going to be moving forward. Bagley's health situation hasn't been great, right? So just having a veteran presence in that locker room, like to add to Harrison Barnes, I think would be good for an organization like that. And, there's no secret that Buddy Hield is not happy there. Philadelphia would probably, in this imaginary scenario, have to throw in a pick too. But that could solve a lot of your problems. You know what I mean? Like, I can create scenarios where the Sixers can be pretty good right away.
All right, so we're going to switch to the Heat real quick, and then Alf's got to go, and Greg and I are going to finish this thing up. But will you say it?
So Alf was literally just here to fight with me. That's all you brought him in for?
That's pretty much it. But
I mean, for the love of God.
Well, for the love of God. That's 5
Good
words.
radio. It's good radio, man.
That's 5 words. For the love of God. There's another 5-word phrase that became very popular on Twitter. Let's do this together. I'd rather be the
Sixers.
Heat.
Look, the way I will end this conversation is this. Until there are banners hoisted in one of those 2 arenas.
No, you can't do that.
Wait. Are you gonna let me
Only
finish?
one team wins the championship every year, George.
Okay, so again, the original conversation was I thought the Sixers championship window was closer than the Heat's. Okay, That's still not inaccurate, to be honest with you.
But almost.
I don't know. I think it is inaccurate. I think they just got swept.
I just told you they're one move away from potentially being
right. Well, yeah, but the Heat are one move away from Giannis.
One move away from dominating the East right now. I mean that's
dominating the East.
If it's Bradley Beal,
or Giannis.
Okay, yeah, but again, you have to hope that happens. Like that's not a given. Like you can trade Al Horford. That is not an immovable. We've learned that there are no immovable contracts.
Well, yeah, but see, like the whole thing with the Heat was everyone said they had no assets, no flexibility, no draft picks, and they couldn't make the moves. Well, now they're about to approach 2 off seasons where they have max cap space, they have young talent, so they're really set up to have flexibility to make these moves. So I feel like the window has shortened for Philly in a lot of ways because of the that is required, where Miami is kind of has the pieces in place and just needs that one more creator to kind of get them over the hump.
You can't say that a team that was predicted to be potentially in the NBA Finals, just because they got swept out of one round, or because their second best player was injured, and that they didn't have any shooting because of their crappy roster construction. You can't say that if they don't make the one right move, that all of a sudden they're not going to be back to the point where everybody thought they were going to be this year. That seems silly. And in regards to the Heat, look, if the Heat win a champion, let me just make my point before Ethan rudely interrupted me. The whole point was somebody's got to hoist the banner, and I thought Philly was closer. And I don't think that has been determined yet, to be honest with you, because neither team has hoisted a banner at this point. So, and by the way, if the Heat end up being the one hoisting the banner, I'm going to be the one popping champagne at my house. So I don't give a crap. And if the Sixers win, then I can just say I was right. Okay.
Win-win. You put yourself in this win-win situation.
I don't lose.
Leave it to Sedano to do.
Yeah, to play both sides here. All right, let's switch. I know Alf's got to go, so Alf, you go. George, I want to transition to something Heat related with you.
The last thing I'll say is George is wrong.
That's fine. Go.
Love you, George.
Out of here. You do the Manscaped ad tomorrow.
All right.
I promised that I would talk about something specific on Twitter today on the pod, which was a little bit of information that I've kind of been gathering about the types of players that Jimmy Butler wants to play with. We've talked about some of this stuff before, Greg. I want to throw a name at you, George, and you tell me how you think he would fit. Kyle Lowry.
Oh, he's perfect. Yeah, he's perfect. He is exactly what they need. The Heat don't have a guy that can defend point guards and defend smaller guards in general. He's amazing at that. It's crazy. He went from being the guy that was bad in the playoffs forever to being the guy that you're like, man, how can you not want that guy in that battle? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so happy for him because he's such a good dude. And yeah, he's exactly what you want. I'm just curious to see, look, Masai is always a step ahead of everybody. You know what I mean? So could he deal him? Maybe. I don't know though. Masai wants to win. And he likes Pascal's trajectory. He likes Anunoby's trajectory. I mean, outside of Miami and San Antonio, historically, in the Masai era specifically, you could talk about Toronto being right there with those two teams.
Actually, I think they're ahead of San Antonio now.
They are, yes. But I'm saying like historically, you know what I mean? Because even Colangelo did a decent job of developing guys prior to Masai.
Do you think he would have the nerve to trade Lowry though? Because like I see like Raptors Twitter talk about building Kyle Lowry statues. So
I don't. I mean, I think Masai, clearly the DeRozan thing will show you he'll do whatever he needs to do.
That's true. Good point.
So, but I would find it harder to believe that he would not. He would have to get something really valuable, I think, in return. I don't think.
But it could just be about money, George, because if you look at their situation, they've got to pay Van Vliet. What I've heard is that Kyle may not want to kind of share the backcourt with Van Vliet for too long. It's kind of been his backcourt, especially since DeMar left. They have Norm Powell. They have, as you mentioned, they love OG's trajectory. They've got Pascal. They have Gasol and Ibaka who are up, and I heard that they want to keep one if they can. I mean, it's a lot of money to throw around, and Lowry's making $27 million. And so, I mean, you could get flexible in a hurry if you traded him. He's the name. I will say this. Every time that I run these kind of bigger names by people in Jimmy's circle, I keep getting Kyle Lowry back. It's interesting. Like what I've been told is, Donovan Mitchell doesn't do enough other than score. That you take a look at, some of the other guys that have been talked about. Drew Holiday, I know he has a lot of fondness for. But the reason I keep bringing up with Jimmy is when Jimmy came down, like one of the things what happened here was we're going to work with you on bringing in the right team around you. Like he's going to have a say, and he's earned a say this year with the way he's competed. Mm-hmm. When you look at the rest of the names, George, and then I want to transition with you real quick to the West. When you look at the rest of the names, would you make a play for Oladipo after what you just saw?
No, absolutely not. I don't know if he's going to be the guy. Look, the good thing about him is he's going to hit free agency after next season,
exactly.
Right?
I mean, you might be able to get him discounted at this point if he says he wants out of Indy.
Yeah. So I think that there's that, but I would not take that risk for anything that is valuable on your roster. I'm looking at Toronto's cap sheet right now, mm-hmm. and they have $86 million committed on the books without Gasol, Ibaka, or Van Vliet. So they're going to pay Van Vliet. Van Vliet is probably going to make in the low $20 million range.
Yes.
So that's 106. Let's just call it 108. Let's say it's 22. Norman Powell's under contract. So if they keep one of Ibaka or whatever, that's another 20. Now they would be right back, Ethan. They would be around the number they're at right now if they only keep one of Ibaka and Gasol and keep Van Vliet. So I have not heard that. Now here's what I can do. I wish you would have asked me, if you would have texted me that beforehand, I probably could have reached out to some people and had better information for you about what I'm hearing in regards to that. So I will do some homework.
Okay. And
for my 5th appearance on the 5 Reasons Sports platform.
With no Alf this time. That's right.
With Alf. No, I love Alf. But I will have better information on that. I will do some homework on that. How about that?
Well, here's a couple other things I've heard. The infatuation with Oladipo may be overstated.
The infatuation is not with Oladipo. Miami with Oladipo. My understanding
is Oladipo with Miami.
Correct.
Oladipo. It's more Oladipo with Miami than Miami with Oladipo.
It's not necessarily Miami to Oladipo.
The infatuation with Donovan Mitchell is more coming from the Bam Adebayo side of the two pillars in Miami than Jimmy, as I understand it.
Yes, Bam is a big fan of Donovan's.
Correct.
I don't think that's as much Jimmy. If you look at the types of players that Jimmy's going to want to play with, the types of guys like Drew Holiday and Kyle Lowry jump to the top of the list. Low maintenance, in a lot of different ways. Tough, physical defenders, who can help you run an offense and can make a shot. Like that is both of those guys fit the profile. I'll go to you on this because I know you have a relationship with Griff, as do I. Do you think that New Orleans will move Drew Holiday because his timeline, and they got a lot of decisions too, Brandon Ingram, etc. His timeline does not necessarily match up with Zion's?
I think for the right price, but he's not going to give him away for nothing either, right? You know what I'm saying? Like much like Masai, I think that he's going to want to get something in return because the way he looks at it is you are you're getting a player. Well, I guess he'll probably opt out, right? Well, maybe not anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this pandemic has changed the finances in a lot of ways.
Very true. And we don't know. There's so much we don't know.
Right. So I don't know what the cap is going to look like. I don't know. Like, those questions are hard, Ethan, because of that. I will just say this, having had not necessarily direct conversations with David Griffin, but having had conversations about Drew Holiday around the league, the sense is that there were plenty of people asking for his availability, but what New Orleans was going to receive in those conversations was not enough for David Griffin's liking.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, final thing before we let you go, and we'll do this one quick, and then Greg and I are going to get to.
I can't talk about the Heat. Like, all we're talking about is transactions and the Sixers.
That's where I was going to go with this. Okay. I'm not going to engage you on Laker talk. The Heat are up 3-0 in this series. I feel like this is a foregone conclusion at this point, which is why we really haven't talked about it tonight. But give me what your upside is for them now that you've seen them in the bubble, because you and I think, are in alignment on a lot of the things that we expected to see in the bubble. And a lot of those things have played out, including Goran playing well, including, who Spoelstra was going to trust, including the young legs and Hero's development. But I mean, has your view of where they can go changed?
I have been a proponent that they can, at the very least, push Milwaukee deep into the series. And I have been a big proponent on radio and television that if it gets to a 7th game, I'll take my chances with Miami in that situation. But I think that that's where this is headed. And look, I just look at their roster and I say to myself, how many teams have multiple guys that they can throw at Giannis? Okay. And if you look around the NBA, there is Miami, there is Toronto, right, in the Eastern Conference. I don't even think Boston is in that category. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like Milwaukee runs over Boston every time they play them. So really there's only, even though Miami has struggled with Boston, so it's weird, right? Like, and Boston has also had pretty good games against Toronto. So it's just kind of weird the way people match up. But, Philly, Elton Brand, to go back to them for a second, his goal, or at least the way he talked about it, is that he built this team to try to stop Giannis. He didn't even get anywhere near Giannis, so there's that. But I just think that Miami and Toronto, yes, specifically, are built to guard him. Obviously, there's Bam. And look, in the first 2 matchups, I think Bam held him to 35% in the 23 possessions, or the 23 attempts that Giannis attempted over Bam. Obviously, Jimmy can guard him some. Obviously, Iguodala can guard him some. Obviously, Crowder can guard him some. Like, they've got guys that they can throw at him that I think can be effective. So I think that that's the thing. Like, we've seen Orlando with a lot worse roster at times get themselves either a win or back in games because they have a good defensive coach in Steve Clifford and they devise a plan. And here's the one thing that Clifford did that I think Eric should look at is, because look, clearly we all know, everyone knows the book on Giannis. Build a wall, right? Build a wall. You got to meet him, above the, it used to be meet him above the free throw line. Now you got to meet him above the break, I think, personally. But what I liked from Clifford and Orlando in that first game, he started trapping Middleton. And Middleton was like, what is happening here? Like, I have no idea what this is like. And it threw them off, like, completely. And, not to say he didn't build the wall against Giannis or whatever, but when Middleton had the ball, they trapped him hard. And I think that that's something Eric should look at. And again, the Heat have these components, right, that they can do this. Eric has got a lot of versatility with this particular lineup. And I think that the layoff is actually something that's been beneficial to the Heat because it allowed Andre Iguodala to be more in tune with the way the Heat want to conduct business, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, I felt like he always kind of understood what Eric was trying to do. But defensively, it's not until you're there that you really get a feel for what they do. And Andre, again, is arguably the smartest player in the league. So, I knew he'd get along with Spo, but it felt like he was a little, kind of trying to play catch up. He hadn't played in a long time, learning a new system. All that was going to be really tough. But now it feels like he is seamlessly part of what they're doing. And it's funny because I still see people on Heat Twitter bemoaning when he's out there. And if you don't know why he's out there, you just don't know basketball. Hashtag learn the game. All right. Hashtag I still miss you, Spoon.
We had a Spoon reference.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's what I would say is that he is, even at 36 years old, he knows what he's supposed to do. You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of in 2006 when the Heat had Gary Payton. And GP was not anywhere near the GP he once was. He may not even have been the glove anymore at that stage. But he had veteran savvy, and he understood the angles. And in this case, Iguodala is still way more athletic than GP was at that stage and has way more length to play with. That allows him to kind of make up for some of that lack of explosion or athleticism that he may have had even a year or two ago.
All right,
so,
but I have two other names for you that you and I both know. The two names I've used are Marley and Battier. That they're just guys who, when they're out there, it's like they don't really have to score, but they just kind of make things work, right? Just because they're always in the right place or getting the ball to the guy who's in the right place.
So, yeah, I mean, Shane was the no-stats all-star, right? The New York Times had that piece when he was with the Rockets and Daryl Morey and those guys. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm with you. I think he's perfect. And I think that he's pretty much going to be in 90% of the closing lineups, depending on matchups and situations. And, you're going to have Bam and Jimmy and him and Goran and a shooter. And maybe it's Tyler. Maybe it's Duncan. Although Hero seems to be more, I think, versatile because you have another ball handler on the floor and he's become a better passer, even though that Milwaukee game was just a complete abomination. I felt like he had like 5 or 6 straight turnovers in that game. I think that and clearly he's not afraid of the moment, right? He was their 3rd leading scorer in the 4th quarter this year for a reason. And so I think that Tyler will probably be heavily involved there. I saw Jay, I guess, in that last game close instead of Tyler. And I don't have a problem with that. I think it just depends on if you need defense or not. So Eric's got a lot of options. But I think that they're capable, and I think Toronto is certainly capable of beating Milwaukee. I still think that if Giannis can hit shots consistently enough where you have to guard him out there, then that changes things. He's hit him at a good percentage. He's just not hitting the volume. And he's taking more now. He went 2 of 2 in that first half the other night, or the other day. I'm used to saying night. And that changed things. So from game to game, though, I don't think you can trust that type of consistency, though, from him. And I think that that's where they're in trouble, is that even at this stage, he's still a work in progress on offense, even though he is an undeniable freak of nature athletically.
Imagine what Rob Fedor could do with him shooting as the shooting coach down in Miami. Hint, hint. Culture. Sorry, had to do it.
Hint, hint. Giannis Bam T-shirt, which we're gonna start getting out there. We're gonna send you one of those to wear on ESPN.
If you want to talk about Giannis, I think that beyond Milwaukee, the suitors are fairly obvious, right? Like it's Miami, it's Golden State, it's Toronto, it's the Lakers. Those are the 4 teams that are.
I'll throw in one more. To me, it's those 4, and it's Dallas.
You know what, you mentioned that to me the other day on the podcast we did, and I still don't understand your reasoning for Dallas. Why?
Because he could play with another top 5 player in the world, and whose game I think in a lot of ways actually fits him because Luka's such a great distributor, and also obviously a plus shooter from range, as we saw tonight. One of the more ridiculous shots you'll ever see at the end of a game. To me, and personality-wise, they seem to fit. My understanding, they already have a bit of a relationship, and personality-wise, they seem to fit. I mean, some of it comes down to their cap sheet, but you figure it out to get Giannis. I would throw them in the mix too, but I've been saying Miami, Toronto, Golden State. I did talk to somebody today who told me it's going to be, if he leaves Milwaukee, it's going to be Miami or Toronto. I mean,
I could see either.
Those are the two I hear most consistent.
See, I think that a lot of people I know think that Golden State is a legitimate option.
I can see that, and I think sometimes we don't hear it as much because you're on the other coast. All right, George, we appreciate it. We're up against it. Thanks for coming on. You didn't say I'd rather be the Sixers, so I failed in that regard. But maybe at some point in the future. So, thanks.
All right, I will come back and do
fifth appearance. I need Kyle Lowry information.
I will have Kyle Lowry info for you on the fifth appearance. I will have that for you.
Right.
See you at the parade on Biscayne.
That's right.
All right, guys. See you.
Thanks, George. All right, Greg and I are going to close this up in a second, but before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That's our friend Dr. Jonathan Chung at Chiropractic Keystone. Actually, it's Keystone Chiropractic, but the website is chiropractickeystone.com. A bulging disc probably isn't why your back and neck hurt. Bulging discs are used to be blamed for all types of spine pain, but the truth is, if you're over the age of 30, you probably have a bulging disc and don't even know it. That's because most bulging discs don't cause any pain at all. When it comes to pain, you're more than just a picture from your MRI. Many patients with back pain or neck pain can become pain-free even though your MRI looks exactly the same. If your doctor is blaming all of your pain on a bad disc, make sure you get second opinions from healthcare providers that have a strong focus on rehab. Get more health tips like this and more by following Keystone Neuro, that's on Twitter, Keystone Neuro, Neuro, or at Dr. Jonathan Chung on Twitter and Instagram. All right, coming back, we were going to devote more time to this, but we went a little bit long with George. You want to do a guts check, Greg, or you want to hold it?
No, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, today's guts check.
I think everybody needs to get a grip. You got to stay together if you got the guts and you don't find the first door and run out of it.
There are no obstacles. There's no obstacles. All there are accusations and opinions. We have done this since 1995.
We'll find out what we're made of here if you got the guts.
This is Guts Check with Greg Sylvander.
Okay, so I'm going to make this one relatively easy, and we're just going to look through a catalog of old tweets and see some old takes that we were able to expose earlier today as it relates to the Miami Heat. So I'm going to go through these kind of rapid fire. We're not going to spend too much time unpacking each one, but it's just fun to read them in retrospect. So this one comes from January 12th, 2016. Kyle says, how long until we can start talking about how bad of a trade that was by the Heat to get Goran Dragic? The next one on 2/21/15 from Crossover. Bad trade. Norris Cole is better than Dragic. Pat Riley is a fool. The next one comes February 19th, 2015. Now the Heat have nothing on the bench. Bad trade. Lost their bench and both first-round picks. Dragic isn't worth any of that. They panicked. Hold on. It gets better. And don't worry, Ethan. I'm going to leave yours out of here. Pat Riley, so this is coming from 6/21/19. So we're approaching free agency, the Jimmy Butler free agency, mind you. Pat Riley, satisfied with his last few years of mediocrity and not good enough, but not bad enough purgatory. And lastly, we're going to go to myself, where I said the Heat will win a fourth title before the Sixers win one with any member of any process. Save this tweet, screenshot it, etc. Management. That was from 3/23/18. I am conveniently leaving out some of the other ones where I called culture BS, and I was extremely upset about the Rodney Magruder cut, which then enabled them to bring in Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, right? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah. You are leaving those out. I had those bookmarked for you. There was another one that was sent to me today, and I will read mine. Okay, I'll do it before we go here because I feel like that's only fair. But our guy Adam over at Clutch NBA found this one for me. This was from you. Heat need the next young stud to be the anchor of the next era. The involuntary tank is the only way to get that. That's from December 15th, 2014.
Oh,
so that one
that hurts.
I will read mine. I will read mine because you threw this out here today. Let me find it.
I'm sorry.
I got to give the context because, all of a sudden, if it goes to look, Mike Ryan found it. If it goes to old takes exposed, I'm totally screwed. But let me find it. It's in here somewhere. You threw me under the bus today.
I was trying to leave it out, man.
You threw it in here. I'm trying to find it. It was my Jimmy Butler tweet from 2018. Here it was. This was tweeted out of frustration because this damn process was taking so long. If you remember, November 3rd, 2018, I tweeted Jimmy Butler, ... issues with key teammates in Chicago, issues with key teammates in Minnie, which most there believe he caused, or at least that's what I was told at the time. Stages a charade in concert with ESPN. Kind of did. Remember when Rachel Nichols just happened to show up in Minnesota that night? Now won't play back-to-backs and do $42 million at age 33 with extension. At this point, pass. But I said at this point. And a few months later, I was pushing for a Jimmy Butler trade because the circumstances have changed. So that's how I'm getting myself off the hook with that one.
I can't believe I said they should have tanked. I'm never going to live that down.
Involuntary tank. All right, thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll do another Guts Check next week. We're going to have a live pod after the game. Well, not a live stream. We're going to do a live stream before the game, before Game 4, which is at 6:30 p.m., so we'll be on at 6, and then we're going to do a podcast afterwards. Thanks to George for joining us. Thanks to Al for joining us, and then bolting. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.